Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Chelsea Echo and welcome to your preview of Chelsea versus Everton. The early kickoff on Saturday. Before we get started, in the wise words of Mahatma Gandhi, never back the early kickoff. But I am joined by Dan as usual. But we are joined by a guest this week. Ladies and gentlemen, it's OzTalksFootball. Yay!
Hello.
Yay!
How are we doing, everyone? Thank you for having me on, guys.
Yay!
It's my first
Clap.
podcast appearance ever, so unbelievable scenes.
I like that. We do like that. We like the fact that we're taking your cherry.
Yes.
And speaking of taking cherry, the Pope died, so the Catholic Church is having issues with signing altar boys. But that's just a bit of current affairs here. We do little bit of football because you're the guest this week. We normally do something called the Donk Report. So even when we're miserable, and we have been over the past few weeks, we've had something to talk about. Which is like mixing current affairs and Chelsea, but putting a donk on it, so it sounds even better. But this week we thought we'd be in keeping with current affairs, and the bin men are on strike, so Dan decided to go on strike and not do the donk report.
No, it's not. It's not me. The Donk Report are their own separate entity. I take no responsibility. The Donk Report has gone on strike. They're trying to negotiate a new wage with the union, the Chelsea Echo Union, which hasn't formed yet. It's a complete mess. I have no comment on it, to be honest. But the Donk Report will be back next week.
Yeah, they want more donks per minute, and we can't do that at the minute because we don't have the facility to provide more donks. But obviously, we're going to talk a little bit about Everton coming up this week. But of course, we have some big news obviously coming out of Chelsea this week because apparently we tried to sign Virgil van Dijk. Apparently, we're trying to sign Kevin De Bruyne, and Enzo Maresca is very bald and has re-dyed his beard. So, we're going to touch on all that stuff first. And obviously, let's jump in at the deep end, Dan. Let's talk about the big news this week, obviously, first, which is the fact that the Roman Abramovich has broken his silence on the sanctions, which I'm very, very excited to hear about. It's been coming out in a new book. Dan is actually getting the guy who wrote it on his show. What's his name again, Dan? Sorry, I feel really bad. I should know this.
Nick Purwell. He's been covering Chelsea for a long period of time, and he's been covering football for a long period of time. So he's definitely well connected, and he's a good reporter. So I'm pretty sure and he was actually directly covering and breaking stories whilst the takeover process was going on. So I'm sure you would have read his work or heard his name at some point if you follow Chelsea and you keep up to date with news. So it's not just like some complete outsider. This is someone who was literally in the reporting business as the takeover was going on. But yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see what Abramovich has to say about all of this and other figures involved. It's not just Abramovich. I assume it's going to be a chapter or a part of the book. It's also going to include various parts of that takeover process, and even Abramovich talking about the start of life at Chelsea as well, which is pretty fascinating as well.
That's going to be really, really exciting. I think that the fact that Roman Abramovich, I think the last time he did it was based on what Nizar Kinsella was saying, friend of the pod, what a legend, by the way. Just like we were just having a chat with Naz earlier. Naz was sort of saying that Chelsea hasn't broken his silence at all to any journalist, apart from a very, very, very brief statement when Frank Lampard got sacked the first time. Sorry to bring that up again, Owen. I know that triggers you a little bit. We just did a show on Owen's channel, Dan, where he was talking about how that was the last time he really related to Chelsea, and that when Frank Lampard got sacked, it broke him. So he's just been a rebound after rebound.
Yeah, that's it.
Drug fueled orgies with different managers. Like it's been that sort of thing just going on all the time.
Graham Potter wouldn't have been a great one there, but yeah.
Oh, that would have been the worst one. Graham Potter is a bit like
we gave her all though.
The girl. He's the girl who takes Tinder too seriously, but on their bio they say they don't take life too seriously. That's what I feel like Graham Potter is. But yeah, so basically, I'm going to be very excited to see how that all develops. But obviously, it does bring us on to our next topic, which is the new ownership and how things are going with Chelsea. Now, Dan, I have mentioned to you, of course, before we started as well, that me and Owen were doing a show where he was Maresca in. I was leaning more towards Maresca out. I don't like to use the terminology because it feels very, very dire circumstancery, is how I'm going to describe it. But Dan was intrigued as to Owen's thought process. So I'm just going to sit quietly with my cup of tea and I'm going to just watch as Dan asks you lots of questions. And I promise that I don't make it feel a bit, Gestapo-y and ask you where the rebel bases are.
I think before the questions come in, and the way that you're saying that you don't want to say you're Maresca out because it's too kind of like just route one in a sense, is that I'm not
route one.
I'm not buzzing. I'm not buzzing with what's going on right now, and I'm not like, yes, Maresca in. He's like the one amazing, but it's just I'm way more in the sense of wanting to keep him than letting him go. I think in terms of that, in no point am I absolutely buzzing what's going on at the moment, and I wish we could just go back to November and just all be happy go Larry, but it isn't like that at the moment. But I still hold on to a lot of what was happening at that time and think it's the same as now, but just obviously the results are slightly different. Well, very different.
The interesting context to me is that when Louis brought up the canon moment for you as a Chelsea fan, like it felt like a canon moment when Frank got sacked. And I have to say, personally, it also was for me. I think in some ways it was like the last Chelsea head coach departure that really emotionally affected me in a negative way. Even Tuchel didn't, because like I love Tuchel, right? But it just, I think there comes a point where you've been through so many that it's like, right, it's another shrug on the shoulder. We've been here before. We'll be here again, lads. So I think my big question to anyone about Maresca at the moment, and it's not about trying to expose anyone. It's not about trying to put people on the spot. It's just, I think it's a very basic question that needs to be asked. And it's one that me and Louis have asked on a consistent basis to each other. I don't see what progress has been made since November. And I don't see how under this coach there are visible signs of it getting better. I think that is the fundamental problem, I think, for a lot of people at the moment, is you bring up November and, well, firstly, I'll ask that question, right? Like, how do you either counter that or think that maybe there's more context behind that? Because I think for a lot of people currently, they've been watching for months on end, no progress whatsoever. Yeah. And that's why I think a lot of people, there are other reasons why, but I think that is a core reason why many people feel he's out of his depth currently.
I think my answer would be to what the progress has there been since November is to look at the progress that happened from August to November. To me, that seemed like quite a lot of immediate progress. And I know some people say about it being kind of like some lasting kind of energy from Pochettino into that bit, and we were just kind of having a kind of hybrid of Pochettino and Maresca kind of ball there, and then after November the truth has kind of been found out. For me, I feel very similar about the football from August to November, from until November till now, but I think just some things change. I think first of all we have the youngest squad in the league, and I think when you have a team of that age you're going to get inconsistency 100%. And I think when you have a young team like that, when it's going good, it goes amazingly. When it goes bad, things drop quite quickly. And I think when you have someone like Jackson, who's kind of our only kind of lookout up top, I mean, and Kunku's useless. Mark Gu, he's a good lad, but I just don't think he's got it. And then when you have Palmer, who isn't necessarily playing badly, but his output, which we've relied on so heavily for the last year and a half, is dropping. I think I see similar football. I think I see similar examples of football, but it's just without that, things are going to drop and the results aren't going to go that way. I think if we're looking at Palmer and Jackson putting in that output, maybe 20, 30% more, there is so much less heat around Enzo Maresca. There's so much, we're doing so much better position-wise. I used an example earlier when I talked about that Ipswich game. Before going 2-0 down, Nicholas Jackson had a chance in the 4th minute and he hit the post. If that goes in, that result's completely different, and all the stories about it. Enzo Maresca's done a great job in terms of his management. He would have controlled the game from then, hopefully. Maybe not, because who knows with the kind of team that we currently have. But I first of all see the progress being made. I think this team's a lot better, a lot more sustainable for the future than last season and the season before. So there's progress in that sense. And from when I've saw us playing really well and getting the results, that is enough for me to hang on till. Maybe if the season ends badly, awful Club World Cup, and the start of next season, say Maresca is still there, maybe if this keeps continuously happening and the results aren't back to what they were kind of from August or November, maybe then I'll go, actually, I've been hanging on to that kind of amazing purple patch for a bit too long. And we need to realise it is the manager is the reason we're not getting results, not just a fluctuation in form. But right now, I'm hanging on to it still, I think.
See, I do I fundamentally disagree about the style of football. I think that for me, watching Chelsea, I have seen a visible change for the worst. And I understand why people cling on to that start of the season. Like me and Louis were very positive about that start to the season. How could you not be? Like no one expected us to be where we were in November and December based on the mess that was the summer. And to see an attack that I think the positive for me was that the good work that had been done by Pochettino that I didn't feel needed to be ripped up was continuing. I think the thing I'd counter with is that everything I heard from Maresca, even during that good run, even after some of those wins that people really enjoyed, was this style of football is not what I want. This is not what I'm intending for this team. And if you just, this is fundamental. I could go on a separate tangent here about this is a fundamental issue of appointing Maresca in the first place. There's very little to go by in his CV to kind of gauge what an Enzo Maresca team is even supposed to do. But in terms of last season, in terms of what he says he believes in football, I think from, what would it be, mid-December to now, we have watched much more of what I expected from Enzo Maresca in terms of what his style is. Much slower positional play, much more about intricate passing moves, players seemingly standing kind of in position or in certain areas and, waiting for the ball to come to them, these rotations and kind of inverted football a lot more. And I think my concern is that Maresca has his style of football. This is his style and he's not going to evolve it. So I think that my counter would be, you're not getting what you had pre-Christmas because Maresca doesn't believe in that style of football. So really what you're left with is either this is going to turn around, and I think it's a valid point, right? Either individual players have a massive uptick, but I guess the separate debate is how is this football conducive to those individuals being in a better run of form, if you know what I mean. So I guess that would be my sort of counter, and sort of, in terms of, to me, just based on what I hear from Maresca, based on what I've seen, I don't think pre-Christmas was what he wanted this Chelsea team to be. And so I kind of have reached a point where when I hear that argument, I kind of go, I'm not sure it's that valid, because I don't think he wants to get back there like everyone else does. And I think that's a flaw. That's a major problem. And that's a disconnect that is being felt. Louis, you can jump in at any point if you want, if you want to give your thoughts and play a little bit more Route One.
No. I'm enjoying just listening. I now understand why people love this podcast, and it's the fastest growing chess podcast on the planet. Sorry, just little.
I'll get back on mute.
There.
No, the thing is that my issue with my take is a lot of it seems to be that people think I'm very kind of like Maresca in black and white, not Maresca. Like, I completely agree with a lot of what you're saying, and I understand that. It's just, I think maybe where the reason why I'm more of that Maresca is I think I might probably have more patience than the normal Chelsea fan into seeing whether he can build this kind of system into a better kind of format using bringing more players in the summer. I know the way we bring players in isn't the best, and some of the players that we bring in with the sport directors and everything isn't the best. But I think, I don't know, I guess maybe I'm just inherently very positive in the way that I kind of look at it. And I think, I do think that even though he has said it and there was elements of not, I do think when I see us playing good at the moment, which isn't obviously very often, I do see things where I'm like, well, that I'm going to hang on to. Even that last 10 minutes against Fulham, and I know it's 10 out of 10 minutes compared to 80 minutes, which weren't that good. But even like those 10 minutes, it's those moments that I kind of hang on to, and I'm like, I can see players playing for a manager. I can see him making some certain decisions that work out well for us getting the win. And it's just looking good. Look, that like those moments I just really hang on to, and I don't know whether that's me not being probably analytical enough and too much of an emotional fan, but football is all about being emotional and supporting kind of the club to me. So yeah, but I think one of the other kind of things about Maresca is that I think if you were to sack Maresca, and I can understand why some people would want to do that if we finish the season outside the Champions League, for example, I don't see a manager that comes in and kind of like changes it too much. I think even like someone like Ancelotti that comes in, I don't think that's realistic because the ownership wouldn't want someone of that kind of ego and that bravado. But I think like someone like him would be, I think he'd struggle with maybe like all these young raw kind of talents that we have. And I think yeah, it's systematic. I think it's never really Maresca at the main fault for me. It's what he's doing with what he's got. That sometimes can be the issue. Yeah, it is tricky to me because I do really understand some of the Maresca out kind of thought processes, but then at the same time, I put my kind of emotional hat on, and I'm like, there are some moments where I just absolutely love Enzo Maresca.
I think
like when? Sorry,
yeah.
Like when? Like give us instances where you felt really connected. Like have you ever felt like he's a man which represents you as a Chelsea fan? Because that's realistic. That's what a lot of fans look for, right?
I think that kind of idea is a bit like Disneyland. It's a bit kind of like dreams will come true kind of thing. Like I don't think it's the manager that I think it's a cherry on top for me if there's a connection with the manager, for example. I think it's more the players and it's more just like the kind of culture around the club. Now, maybe some element of detachment to Chelsea at the moment is the overall thing, what the owners are doing, and kind of things like that. But I think my personal attachment, I know it sounds really simple, is just like I love going to watch Chelsea and I love watching Chelsea on TV and I love it when we win and it sucks when we lose. And that's kind of my attachment to the club. Yes, when we had Lampard in charge first time. Yes, when Tuchel was like, when we were playing well and winning the Champions League, I felt an attachment to him. But not necessarily feeling like an emotional connection to Enzo Maresca right now isn't anything of a red flag to me. I think I did feel an attachment to him more of attachment to him when we were kind of winning in those early months, as we talk about. But that's because we were winning, and it's very easy to feel attached and happy when you're winning because you're always happy and smiling. There's no negatives. He could say the stupidest thing in his press conferences, but no one really cared. No one really like pick up on it. When we have an unlucky loss or a draw, and he says these things, which he has to improve his public speaking because I think it's so simple to appease Chelsea fans in press conferences. You just talk about a winning culture, and you say, and if you lose, then you say the players aren't good enough, or like own up to your mistakes, and those kind of things are really easy. He hasn't got that sorted yet. He needs some PR training, for sure. But yeah,
to counter that, I'll stay quiet. I'm gonna just.
But no, sorry, Louis. It's just because I can kind of relate to your perspective on Maresca in a way because I felt like I felt like I was in a minority with Maurizio Sarri. I was very positive about Sarri, and I was very intrigued to see where things would go post that season with Sarri. And there's even a bit with Graham Potter where I was a little bit more supportive and positive about Graham Potter when he was here. However, I think on both occasions, either in retrospect or kind of even when it was going on, especially with Graham Potter, I think for me on that emotional side, I think there's just for me, even if individually I feel a different way, I think because of a variety of reasons, Maresca being the bland technocrat he is just it to me. It is a red flag. Like it
Mhm.
is something that grates against people, and I think that what concerns me most is that these were things that I flagged even before he'd taken charge, because they were pretty evident if you spoke to any Leicester fan last season that he doesn't really communicate that well in press conferences. He isn't that engaging. His football isn't that engaging. And this was in a promotion title winning season in the championship. This wasn't a bad season. So it's, and I kind of thought to myself, well, what's going to happen at this current moment in Chelsea history? I think that's the thing why I think an emotional, intelligent coach is so important currently, because as you've just referenced, people are losing their grip with the club currently. They feel either insulted by the ownership, they feel either insulted by the head coach, they don't connect with the current squad, they feel like the club is drifting away from them. So it's for me, it's just an oversight. And I actually don't blame Enzo Maresca, the individual, because why wouldn't he take this job? Like he wins the championship and then he gets handed an opportunity to take over at Chelsea with this ridiculously long contract. Anyone would take that role. I think the flaws of Maresca are less for me about Maresca, the individual. It's for me, his failure and flaws as a Chelsea head coach are reflective of the people above him, are reflective of the failures of how could you not see all of this coming 12 months ago, which I think you should have if you approached thing. I just want to ask you, because it's like, I know as individuals, right, we can sometimes, and it was me with Sarri, right? Like I remember at the time, like when people were feeling like there's no connection with him as a head coach. And it was the same with Graham Potter. Like there was a lot about Graham Potter that I respected. I like the fact that he didn't walk into press conferences and change the way he was. I think just as as like a human thing, I respect that a lot about someone. But there also is just like, unfortunately, there's no way to come to it, like a political reality of being Chelsea head coach. You are speaking to the masses. You are speaking to people that need to get them behind you. And I just feel time and time again, Enzo Maresca has failed on very basic ways. And I think the condescending tone at times that started most notably with that Leicester game, I could track it back to what he was saying after we got knocked out by Brighton in the FA Cup. The comments after the Ipswich game were atrocious, really. And even after Warsaw and even after Fulham, like this big win that you said, like emotionally was huge for us, right? And then his comments after is kind of like a shrug on the shoulder, like it actually wasn't that big of a result. I feel like all of these things for me they're just red flags that I just can't, unless he does a 180 as a head coach, I can't see them being rectified. Do you understand why, like, to a lot of supporters, that just it grates at them, and it's why, like, they can't see the positives. They don't see the point in continuing, because it feels like to them that's not their head coach, and he kind of in some ways gives the perception, whether it's the reality or not, he gives the perception that he's looking down on them.
Yeah, no, I completely understand that kind of viewpoint, and I think it's his number one thing that he has to improve on. He, as you say, when you take that Chelsea job, it's different to Leicester. You're speaking to a large amount of people, and you're speaking to a very opinionated fan base in Chelsea Football Club, and that's something he has to get better at. I think at the beginning, in those kind of first few months, I really liked some of the things he was saying, and I really had this. I felt like he was just this kind of very kind of arrogant, kind of like, he seemed like a proper Chelsea manager in the way he spoke. But it seems like when we lose and things aren't going well, his dialogue is just not what we want to hear, and that has to improve. And I think that is because he is a manager probably more in the beginning of his career. And if we got someone like Ancelotti or someone like that, we wouldn't be experiencing those kind of press conferences, because they know how to play the game. But for me, I can't I won't accept like that part of his job not being good enough as that much of a red flag to me. It is a red flag, and if it continues for a lot longer, it will be a red flag for me, and one of the reasons why I would maybe want him to kind of go. But at this moment in time, I think his kind of what he's saying outside, all that matters to me is what he's saying to the players. Fundamentally, it can upset me if he says something bad after a win or a loss. All I want to know is that he's saying the right things to the players, and the kind of information I'm getting and the feeling I'm getting is that the players and him have a very clear relationship, and they're kind of doing what he's telling them to do. Now, whether you like what he's telling them what to do is a different question, but yeah, he has to improve it. I can see how Chelsea fans can really get grated by it, but I just don't think it's something that grates me that much. Yeah.
Well, we'll have to see how things develop, but I think it's fair to say that the Chelsea Echo is maybe not route oneing Maresca out quite yet, but we're dancing around it much like he does around an 18-yard box, and tries to carve out Mona Lisa smile. But that's kind of where we stand. It's interesting what Owen says, and guys, obviously, if you do agree with either of us, or it's like epic rap battles of history style, like Dan versus Owen. Who won? You decide. Go from there, and then we could sort of like figure out where everyone stands. Let us know in the comments if you're watching on YouTube. If you are listening, obviously let us know on Spotify, because there's a comment section there, and we don't want to hear what you guys have to say. But I mean, it does kind of lead quite nicely in some other points. Obviously, Virgil van Dijk and Kevin De Bruyne have been linked with a move to Chelsea this week, which is interesting. It's been Owen's so excited by that he's had to run away. He's like, oh my god, really? And he's checking in reality.
Sorry, shut the door.
It's so nice. We've obviously been linked with these senior players, and it obviously does lead into another issue at Chelsea, which is the sporting directors. Now, obviously, Enzo Maresca is somebody who has faced a lot of issues. Like you said, it's not entirely his fault. This does like the sporting directors. I mean, news this week coming out of Chelsea, just looking at some of the names that Chelsea have been linked with over the past 24 hours. So Chelsea's summer targets, according to Sky Cave or Cave Solicol, we've got the striker links of Liam Delap, Victor Osimhen, Hugo Ekitike. Dan, how do you say his name?
Like that.
Ekitike. I'm not going to. Ekitike. Benjamin Šeško. Jonathan David. Wingers, Nico Williams, Jamie Gittins, Alejandro Garnacho. There you go, have that. Dean Huijsen, Jared Branthwaite, and Mark Gahey have been all linked with a move to Chelsea, and apparently on Chelsea's list of transfer targets. You talk about the quality of football, right? We talk about the issues that Chelsea are facing. Harry Kane has been mentioned already by Dan as, you go for a senior player, someone who's serious on that list. A lot of these names have been touted for Chelsea for a long time. Literally, as we've been recording, as you two were having your back and forth, which was extremely exciting. Apparently, in Chelsea's case, according to Fabrizio Romano, how about that for your bloody Paul Merson comment? Dean Huijsen has not decided his next club yet, and as a £50 million release clause, that will be triggered. Chelsea, Liverpool, Arsenal all still interested. Bayern keen since January, but depends on sales, and Real Madrid haven't decided if they want a new centre-back or not. So realistically, Chelsea going into bat with these guys, obviously it hinges a lot on this season. Owen, you and I discussed at length on your show about how poor the sporting directors have been, how poor each of the winners have been. Me and Dan have spent the past year moaning about it and bringing it up when everyone else was really excited in August, and we were telling them to all shut the fuck up. It is what it is, mate. It's the viewers there saying, sorry, like, categorically, you're wrong, and we were right. Are there names on that list that you look at and go, really excited by that? That's a clear option. Or do you feel it's very much a case of, again, Chelsea maybe fall into the trap of flavour of the month?
There's this whole thing online about Chelsea needs to buy experience, and I do agree in some way. There was talk this week about Chelsea don't necessarily want young players, or they won't not sign old players. They just kind of want this impact, and that is kind of what I want. I mean, we look at someone like Dean Huijsen, and I think he's incredible for the age that he is. He's such a good young talent, and he's someone that I would want Chelsea to sign. But if we did sign him, I wouldn't just want it to be him. I'd want to sign someone with that kind of like more experience and more different profile. Like, I'm not saying Dean Huijsen is better or worse than Achipong, Colwill, or Fofana, but if I'm grouping centre backs into a very vague kind of graph, I would put them in a somewhat similar kind of profile-ish of players. That obviously they all have different things. Like Huijsen has height, Colwill has kind of like the same distribution ability, potentially those kind of things. But someone like, and I can't claim to watch all Bundesliga matches, but someone like a Jonathan Tah, in the sense of someone that is in early 20s, that is late 20s, has international experience, has club experience, won the Bundesliga last season, all these things. That is someone that I think I kind of am looking for in that kind of more centre-back role. And then in the striker department, I've been very clear in the last couple of months that Delap is the one that I am pushing for. I think if you go for someone like an Osimhen or someone more established in their career, I think you have to sell Jackson. Whereas if you get someone like Delap, I think you can have both of them. They're different profiles of strikers. You can have both of them competing against each other and bring the best out of each other and be able to use them differently in different teams, different competitions. So yeah, for centre back and kind of striker, those are the kind of things I'm looking at. I'm looking at more experience in the centre back, and I'm looking at someone similar to Jackson as well up top.
So I have something for you. This is prime Beneventi ball I'm about to lay you down on, right? This is what Chelsea should be doing, right? This is elite caliber, elite level football. I don't think that Nicholas Jackson's a striker. I think you look at the strengths that he has, and he feels like a Kalou or like an Anelka in that Ancelotti season, where they're out wide, kind of slide in, almost like Cody Gakpo does for Liverpool. I'm not going to say Mo Salah because that'd be ludicrous, but like Cody Gakpo on that left-hand side is that striker, but he plays on left wing and he comes inside and gets involved. But if it was me, Chelsea, the wingers that Chelsea are looking at, none of them move the needle for me. Jamie Gittins looks all right, not set the world alight for me. Alejandro Garnacho has the shittest haircut I've ever seen and is also bang average at Manchester United. And on top of that as well, you know, you look at some of the other players that are involved and you look at, so I need to get the list back up again because I've lost the list. I've lost the list! Hang on.
Was
you look
Nico
at
Williams on the
Yes.
list?
Nico Williams. He seems all right, but again, I think he's had a great Euros. You then look at the rest of his season, and he seems to have just kind of stabilised. It's not really set the world alight. There's obviously talk of Mykhailo Mudryk potentially actually coming back as well. That's come out over the past 25 minutes whilst you guys were talking. But I know that's like another conversation.
I have to ruin my Thursday.
Listen, there's nothing wrong with Mickey. I love him. But, you know, we'll put that to the side. I do think that Chelsea need experience. This side needs someone who can set the standard and allow for the growth. You talked about it as centre-back, and I think that's a given. The problem is the entire spine of this team has no experience. Like the fact we're going, okay, we need to sign a striker, we need to sign a centre-back, we have problems at goalkeeper, central midfield is the only one where it'd be like, oh, okay, we might be all right. The entire spine is fucked. That's that. And the fact that, for example, you've gone, let's put Wesley Fofana in the conversation. It's like, how reliable is he? He's injured again. Like it's someone else who's gone again. So you're going, well, and then you look at the rest of the options. Axel Dizassi's out on loan and absolutely, definitely, unfortunately, coming back to the club because Villa won't sign him. Benoit Badiashiel's not been the same player apart from the 6 months we signed him in that first window. I look at Josh, and I think we put a lot of pressure on 18 yards to perform, who I think is naturally a right back and should be playing there. And I think I'd like how versatile he is, but I want to see him play in his best position to allow for him to grow in that position. And then after that, you're then looking at other names and other players. It's like, oh well, Levi hasn't really after all that pressure that was put on him in that initial window where Chelsea signed him to a long-term contract, expect him to be the leader, expect him to grow, because he's not had the people around him to allow for that development. I don't think we've seen the best Levi Colwill. Whereas, for example, if he'd gone to Liverpool or if he'd gone back to Brighton and he'd been playing alongside a senior centre-back, I'm not putting Lewis Duncan, Virgil van Dijk in the same conversation, but these are people who have been around the block, have played a lot of football, who can allow that player to grow and work into that situation, right? That is an issue across the whole board, across the whole team, because all they've looked at in terms of the growth of these players is assets and looking at the financial portfolio and what their potential is and how they can grow. They basically treat it like career mode. You know, this lad's got 79 potential right now, but I'm going to whack out to 85 because we're going to put him in some extra training drills. So no, it doesn't work like that. I do think seniority and having those serious players come in would make a difference. If you sign, I don't want to sign Victor Osimhen personally because he didn't want to come here in the first place. So why the hell would you spend your time trying to go get him again? But we use that as an example. That's a player which has had serious caliber in Europe. People were after, people wanted. Victor Gyökeres is another player like that as well. You then look at centre back. I'd like Mark Gahey personally. We'll talk about DNA and culture. You got a captain, you got a leader, you got a player that's ambidextrous. What was it, Dan? You tell me what the word was because you use more big words than I do. Ambipedal. That's it. He's ambipedal because he can use both feet. That's it. We're intelligent here at the Chelsea. We get that, and I think that adds that quality. And then in midfield, I mean, look, Kevin De Bruyne, I don't know where he'd fit personally, but Chelsea saying they want to sign Virgil van Dijk, I feel that was very much a PR stunt in terms of how they wanted to address that situation. Personally, I just couldn't see that being a move at all, given the whole situation in terms of how we like our wages, and that's another issue for another day. But something we can talk about. But that's obviously the big news coming out of Chelsea. We're going to move on now to the Everton game. Obviously, 12:30 kickoff on Saturday. Owen, how are you feeling? Do you feel given how you feel about Enzo Maresca, how confident do you feel about this game?
I think games like this, the early kickoff, a defensive Everton team, these are the ones that scare me under Enzo Maresca because it's always I love Enzo Maresca, although we don't kind of win the games, but against the big teams, I like the football a lot more because I think we have such good profiles for that kind of on the break football. But when we're playing against Everton, it is going to be it's a game where you go Noni, Cole, and Jadon Sancho. You've got to just get some incredible technical ability out there and hope that one of you comes up with something brilliant, or Jackson puts one of those kind of half-open goals away. It does scare me. The early kickoff is the early kickoff. Everton just feels like Everton early kickoff in a game that you have to win is just like, I'm so much more scared for this game than I am Liverpool at home the week after. They're going to be on a hangover after winning the title, and anything can kind of happen on that kind of game. Whereas this one, it feels so scripted against us, but I am, as the ever positive Chelsea fan, somewhat confident that we could just get a quite quiet, like 1 or 2-0 win. But you just never know, really, do you?
Dan was grinning then because I feel like he disagrees, but also agrees, but is maybe panicking like all of us here.
I don't know what to make of this because the performance against Fulham for about 80 minutes was bad. I mean, the first half was terrible, and I think the debate I think a lot of people have been having is, was that comeback on Sunday a sign of Enzo Maresca, or was it a sign of the players just turning around and going, we're turning this round ourselves, and then we will see what happens on Saturday? Because it's another must win. I mean, it just is must win. That's what these games are now. Every single game between now and the end of the season is defining for whether Chelsea are going to fail or succeed this season, at least in my eyes, in terms of Champions League football. So I agree that it will be that type of game where Everton are going to be deep, they're going to be defensive, they're going to be awkward. But I mean, I guess this is how so many opponents. I can't think of many opponents who come up against Chelsea who haven't done that in recent months. And I think the reason you see from Arsenal to Leicester to Copenhagen to Legia Warsaw to Ipswich do all of this, and varying levels of quality of the teams I've just mentioned there, is because, don't want to spark the debate from earlier, but I think it's because a lot of teams kind of understand, if you sit in kind of a well-structured low block, Maresca's style of football doesn't offer a lot of invention and is pretty predictable to kind of nullify. So it will come down to individual moments. Again, it will come down to Marco Correa larping it from distance into the bottom corner. It will, that Fulham win was less about tactics. It was less about performance and less about like overwhelming kind of confidence. It's more you're hoping it's the psychological boost that into the game has, and whether it can travel to the next game. That's all I can really go off. In terms of performance, you can't really be confident. Individually though, I think Tyrique George got to be starting this game. You can't have a situation where that right boot in some ways has saved Enzo Maresca. And I know we can talk about Pedro Neto's brilliant finish, but like that, if that goal changes everything, it completely wakes Chelsea up. And I think he's earned the start. Like he absolutely has. Whether he starts on the left or what starts as the centre forward is maybe a question, because he did come off the bench as more of a centre forward.
Should we jump into that then, obviously, and do the Echo 11? Because I feel like Dan's jumping the gun there, because we hear, we decide the 11 as we'd like to see it, not how Enzo Maresca is going to do it.
Okay.
So I think we'll jump straight into that, and obviously we've already said that Tyrique George will come onto in terms of striker or left wing. But Dan, just so Owen knows, should we just go through rule of thumb? Marcus Bettinelli is our starting goalkeeper.
Yep, Marcus Bettinelli is the goalkeeper.
So,
I'm sorry, you've already been outvoted. So
yeah,
that's given a situation.
He can't be worse than the other two. So there we go.
No, I mean the other one on loan is supposed to be spectacular. That's even more news to talk about the goalkeeping situation in terms of how that's being handled, which is an absolute train wreck. But I think that's just a podcast in itself. So Marcus Bettinelli in goal. Back four, I guess, kind of picks itself. I mean, I'm going, for me, if it was me, Marco Correa left back, Reece James at right back, Levi Colwill, and I'm going for Trev as the other centre back, given the situation. Interesting one potentially, though, into midfield is that Romeo Lavia is actually available. So I don't know how you lads feel about that. Do you start Romeo Lavia, or do we just pretend he doesn't exist like he hasn't done for most of his Chelsea career?
He's got 45 minutes left in him this season. It's where do you want to play those 45 minutes in front of the question?
Yeah, that's
it. Is it this one? Is it the 12:30 kickoff?
Oh, it's tough, isn't it? Well, the thing is, if we're choosing 11 on how I want it, because if I'm going with a bit of Maresca in me, then I'm thinking, actually, no, I wouldn't play Caicedo at right back in this game. You want to play Reece James every game. But it's kind of like which one. You don't drop Caicedo. And I think Enzo is quite crucial, especially in these kind of games. I think he's very useful. I don't think Lavia. I think Lavia, if you're choosing Lavia or Enzo, I think this Everton game is 100% an Enzo over a Lavia game for me.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I'd agree with that. So
Lavia probably makes more sense against Liverpool, doesn't he?
100%.
I think he makes more sense against Liverpool or Newcastle, like a higher intensity game.
Yeah.
I agree. So we'll go with that. Then so we've got Enzo Caicedo. We've gone for Cole Palmer in the 10. I'm assuming wingers is where it gets interesting. I think. So I very openly am not the biggest Nani Madueke fan. I do think that he is somebody who I think he's got opportunities and he's proven what he can do on so many occasions, but he's so nonchalant and so inconsistent, and I think his attitude stinks. And it really gets to me, because I could see that there's a player in there that can really prove the difference and prove his value and show how good he is. And unfortunately, he has to start on that right-hand side. I think next season it might be a different conversation if Estevan Willian is as good as he is in Brazil coming into the UK. I think we might see a lot more challenges and maybe a better player coming out of Noni Madueke. But I think obviously starts there. Let's talk about Tyrique George. I'll let you two decide between yourselves. I will mediate. I will do a better job of mediating than the US is doing Russia and Ukraine. So, lads, Tyrique George on the left, or does he start up front for you guys? Owen, you go first.
I think honestly, if I was doing it personally, I would I'd start Jadon Sancho and I'd have Tyrique George as an impact. I would be if the team sheet comes out and Tyrique George is playing instead of Jadon Sancho or playing instead of Jackson, I'm happy with it. But for me, you start the first half with Jadon Sancho, who I think has been improving for Chelsea recently. And then you bring Tyrique George as an impact. I think as an impact, he's so good because he wants it probably more than anyone else. And he's got stuff to prove. And he's just got that brilliant energy that after a tired defence don't want to see. But whether that's for Jackson or for Sancho, I don't know. But for me, I think I'd just about start Sancho because I think overall there's a higher chance of him showing a moment of quality right now than Tyrique George. And I'd much rather have Tyrique George come on than Sancho come on at the end, if that makes sense.
Interesting. Daniel, counterpoints?
I just think that Tyrique George brings an unpredictable energy that I just think this team really needs. And I just think, I can just envisage a situation where Maresca doesn't start him and the first half doesn't go well. Like it's a classic Maresca first half, no goals from Chelsea, and it's 0-0 at half time, and then you end up having to make the decision that you probably should have made in the first half. Sancho has been slightly better. That's I think I've given him credit that he has slightly improved, but I am slightly conflicted whether you play him as a centre forward though. The only reason I say that is because Jackson has been disappointing, but physically he is better than Tyrique George, and that's not a knock on George. And my one fear is against Everton is if George starts and he doesn't start as a wide player and he starts as a number 9, you end up having this problem against a deep defence where where's your focal point? Where's the guy occupying defenders? Who's the guy you're going to hit to take the ball down and bring others into play? That's my one concern. So if I was going to start George, I'd start him on the left instead of Jadon Sancho, because that really is his position anyway. And then start Jackson, but it kind of feels like at the moment he's most likely to feature as a centre forward. So then I kind of understand the logic of bringing him on later as kind of against the tiring defense as kind of a alternative to Jackson. But I don't know. I think just a lot of people will be disappointed if George is not in the starting lineup. It just wouldn't feel logically. It wouldn't feel right. Like if you watch the past game, he comes on, he makes a tangible difference. I don't see how then he isn't given at least one start in the Premier League in a game where, as a left winger, he may have an opportunity to really impact things.
I agree.
It's an interesting point, and I do think that is. I'm personally leaning more towards Tyrique George as well because he's earned it, and I do think he's somebody who offers a threat which we don't or haven't really seen from Chelsea this season. Much like Noni on the other side, where they're actually going to run at players. The problem with Jadon Sancho is, as much as he has improved, he still beats somebody, goes back, heads to the shops. Once he goes to the shops, he heads to ASOS. He's got to drop some post. Then he's got to go to Waitrose and get his food. Then he gets in the car, gets it cleaned, comes back, beats the guy again. Then by the time he gets to get the ball to the edge of the box, everyone's in there and he's lost the position of that advantage that he had. Tyrique George, he's just going to go for it, and I do think that lack of fear that he'll have could actually really benefit taking on that Everton team, especially whoever's playing at fullback. I mean, he's going to terrorise them if he does that. I think if we give him the opportunity to settle and get back into shape, that's when we're really going to struggle. So I think Tyrique George and then Nico Jackson probably the option, because I do think we'd lack it if we've seen this season already. Enzo Maresca's plan B is non-existent, and that plan A hinges so much on Nicholas Jackson that if he doesn't play, we're going to have some serious problems. It does feel a bit odd leaving Pedro Neto out. I will say that after scoring the winner, but we'll have to see how that develops. But obviously, guys, let us know your thoughts down in the comment section. Is this the correct decision? Is this the lineup that you should be seeing at Stamford Bridge at 12:30? Obviously, make sure that you check out the Chelsea Echo on all good platforms. Obviously, we can see it. You can see us on YouTube. As if you are watching us, hi, hello. If you're not watching us and it's just on Spotify, iTunes, wherever, please make sure you give us a 5-star review. It really does help the pod out a lot as we are continuing to grow as the fastest growing Chelsea podcast on the planet. Owen, where can people find you, mate?
OzTalksChelsea on YouTube and on TikTok if you have a bad attention span.
Pardon, not to say that again. I wasn't listening. There you go. But that's where you go. I'm joking. I just had a short attention span joke. No one get offended, please. Go and check Owen out. He's this has been a long time coming. To be fair, we were speaking since the 100% Chelsea days. So it's been good to get you on, man, and definitely have to get you back on again at some point soon. So make sure you head across to TikTok with your short attention span. And you head across to YouTube if you have a longer attention span. Everyone knows where to find Dan at this point. He's everywhere. He's doing lots of different things. But if you want to go find out more about Dan, follow him on Son of Chelsea. And also check out his Substack. That's another thing to check out as well. I might be starting one soon. Haven't decided yet. I've been writing things, but it's been like a diary and it's kind of spiraled.
The advert for my stuff is Son of Chelsea. If you have no attention span, that's the advert.
Yeah, no, mine. Yeah, I mean, I put it this way: I was writing a Substack the other day, and I compared modern football Twitter tacticos to terrorists. So I probably shouldn't do that. Dan, I'll send you the point that I did. It was, I'll send you a screenshot of the paragraph I wrote. But that's that, guys. That is the Chelsea Echo. If you have enjoyed it, please make sure you check us out after the game ends on Saturday. Obviously, final score, the score will be back, and the voice note review will be available. But that is that, and we will see you for the next one. Ta-da!